Virtual reality is something represented in some of our favorite science fiction books and movies. It's something that we use alone at home. We're wearing a headset and we're only interacting with our friends, family, and favorite brands through the confinements of virtual reality. What if that's not the only use case? And what if it's not so science fiction anymore? We're already seeing companies like Meta come up with the Metaverse, which so far it sounds like the user experience is pretty much aligned to what we see in science fiction stories. But what other use cases are there? Today we're talking with Thierry Hubert. Thierry is a responsible technologist. He's a futurist. He's just this awesome person that is working with cities, organizations, and a whole slew of other opportunities to use virtual reality, but also immersive, or what we call mixed or augmented reality, to change the way we really live, right? So what are the true social opportunities, business opportunities, but the consequences we should be thinking of as we interact with these different virtual, digital, mixed worlds? I'm Catherine Dollar, and this is Not So Science Fiction. Today's Nerd Talk is brought to you by Moxie Blue Media. Moxie Blue Media is a campaign and content creation company using stories to improve the way we live, communicate, and conduct business. So check them out if you're looking for a better, more efficient, future-proof way to engage your audience and improve business. Thierry, I am so excited to Nerd Talk with you today. You and I have had so many great Nerd Talks in the past, and we were well overdue, especially now that it's officially 2022. So thanks for joining me, and everyone else is joining in on this Nerd Talk with us today.
Hey, thank you very much, Catherine. It's always a pleasure to see you, even in this crazy distributed remote way of doing it. And I think it's part of the topic too today, so we'll have fun with it.
Exactly. And you and I have talked about this before, and like you said, it's even more timely with the pandemic. All of us are more remote anyway, but there's also times to come together.
Yes.
You know, I was thinking as I took my dog out outside in our backyard. She's a German Shepherd, and she starts chasing the squirrel. Squirrel runs up the tree and it's yelling back down at her from a branch, kind of like, "Don't you chase me." And you and I have talked about before, you know, we're born into a world and an environment, an ecosystem that we are aware of and is immersive to us, but is also aware of us back, right? But now that's moving even more into the technology world. We have AR, VR, all these immersive experiences, but you're the expert, and I'd love for you to share where we are and all the different forms of technology creating these immersive experiences, almost like nature.
Well, yeah, almost like nature. And it's funny how we play that game as humans, right? So we think of it as an extension. What does technology do? Fundamentally, it accelerates time and space, and in this case, extends the senses. So our brain is nothing else than a correlation machine, and it's influenced by its senses, by what it observes. So when we observe the real world and the limitations of the real world, we interact with it and it interacts back with us. Actually, we're born out of the real world and we interact with the real world. Our brain is used to it, our physicality and our senses are based on it. So it's not surprising that with technology, we reproduce, just like you look at my background, that DALL-E visualization, right? That we try to reproduce, although this is not like the real world, a different world. And this is why this is a really fun and timely question. It is a different world where the laws of physics and the laws of logic don't make sense, but because it's systematic, it does start to make sense. And we could be taken by it, by its virtuality. It does not exist in reality, but it exists in our cognitive process, in our fabric. The one thing that is not real are human thoughts, yet they're fed by what they observe. So the technology, where is it going? We're talking augmented reality and virtual reality and the metaverse and all these wonderful things. But what it is really is nothing else than a way to assault our senses with artificial objects, fabrics. And where it becomes really interesting, it's when it's interactive, where it can fool us that it reasons, when we can feel that we have a causality, a reaction to our presence in the environment. And that's the limitations are how close, now that we are doing it visually, how close are we going to be able to do it with the other senses so that it appears to be a seamless experience. And this is where technology is going anyway. And this is where it's so exciting, but at the same time, and based on our conversation, and usually when we geek out, which is what we do, you'll come up with a whole bunch of crazy questions, and I'll do my best to answer them. But the trends replace human sensations. And then we can go down the rabbit hole of what is the economic value of replacing and feeding human sensation and reacting and interacting with it. And of course, that's perhaps where I'll stop right now, because I'm sure, as usual, you have a lot of crazy questions. So,
but you bring up like so many good points already. So I think most people, especially, I mean, even myself, I'm most aware of the virtual reality type of immersive experiences. You put on a headset, you're there, it looks like maybe something's flying at your head or someone's coming to you, but nothing's really touching you, anything like that. Or I've seen a few videos of like the Van Gogh experiences you walk through, and when you're walking, certain tiles light up.
But it's your environment messing up with you. It's your environment, the environment that is being produced that's messing up with you, that's allowing you to embrace it, right? So there is no, it's about creativity. The beautiful thing about this part is human creativity to try to replace nature, or try to enhance nature, or try to augment nature and your interaction with nature. And perhaps, I'm in the field of artificial intelligence, perhaps do a better job at allowing us to interact with machine in a more natural way. The ultimate tool is the tool we don't notice. It's the one that performs admirably, but we don't notice it. We don't put something on our head. We don't put something, on our hands. We always strive to going towards minimalist to reproduce nature. So when you talk about putting it on your head and you see, it's one sense. If we were to create a device around you that would limit your movement when you hit pretty much or we create a suit that has the ability to reduce your motion or to give you more resistance, you would start to believe that you're in a real world. And we see it with games like car racing games where there is pressure, where it tilts to give you a sensation of acceleration. Look at Peloton, for example. I say Peloton because it's a French name. It's not Peloton, it's Peloton. And I'm French, so I can be snob about that. So the point is this: it's trying to fool your senses so that you forget that you're in someplace virtual, right?
Exactly. Can you give some examples? So you kind of did like with the car driving, and we've talked some examples about what either communities like cities, artists, companies are creating, and maybe some that aren't just the visual. Like, I don't know if they're including any other senses and how they're doing that.
There are some senses. So there's a lot of experience. So somebody's trying to do, for instance, a taste simulation. Like imagine an ink printer, and you've broken down the different colors of the different colors upon which you mix them to create new colors. Well, imagine the same kind of logic and technology could apply to reproduce taste or even reproduce smell. So if we understand fundamentally the components, we can inject those sensations in the environment. Right. So we were looking at different projects with different cities in Texas and taking wonderful projects from France, from the the Musée des Lumières, I can't remember the name anymore. They basically, the first one we did, the Van Gogh virtual exposition, all of that, or even external mechanical devices merged with AI, like in different cities where they're doing this kind of like mobile circus that walking to see was a mechanical piece with some interaction. There is a lot of creativity. Or the Salvatore Dali Museum, where you can actually talk to Salvatore Dali, and the AI was designed to reproduce Salvatore's voice and whatnot, and people could he would take a selfie with them on the screen panel. It was not pre-recorded. It was basically understanding and meshing his virtual property, his voice, and then having a system basically reproduce what Salvatore Dali would say or would look like, or its facial expression with a very complex 3D meshing
kind of like
AI models.
A deep fake, but for good purpose.
A deep fake it is a deep fake for a good purpose. But that's the whole point, right? It's we have tools. Do we use them for good or bad? That's another issue. But those kinds of experiences are out there. There's this new moon project that these people are doing in Dallas, where they want to try to create a feeling that you're on the moon on a large scale, merging physical and virtual. cheating your senses to get to fake some emotions. It's endless. It never stops. It's all over the world, from projections on city walls, from and again, I can tell you, senses is everything. We are at the point right now. I think his name is David Eagleman. He did a very few years ago, very interesting TED talk around creating a jacket that would give electrical impulse on the back of somebody who's blind. And because our brain is designed to rewire, when he would get near obstacle, he would get different array of electrical impulse in different places in his back, just like you get photons hitting the back of your retina. Well, his brain was able to rewire basically this stimulation, and he was able to develop from a sensorial, from a tactile sense, was able to reproduce a sense of vision by substitution. Not that he could see, but he could actually have the benefit of what it means to have vision when you are able, your brain is able to recognize those senses as spatial awareness senses. Brilliant.
Oh, wow.
Right? And we do this in gaming. Like I was talking about the car, we tilt the floor to make it look like you're accelerating. So you're pushed back. So we're cheating all the time.
Because the brain fills in the gaps. Or you're calling it rewiring, but because we're so used to how things work in the natural world we were born in. We'll call it the natural organic world that we were born in. It's just filling in those gaps.
And we need it, right? Because how are we going to think a virtual world is credible if it reproduces the organic world, the natural world? So that's the one thing that we say, oh my gosh, I'm going to trust it, or I'm going to believe it because I am familiar with the real pattern. And now you can start to augment it. Now I'm not going to be disoriented because I have my foundations. And this is credibility. It's like when we deal with AI all the time. If you do a chatbot and you say it's an intelligent chatbot, the first thing a human is going to do is do stupid things to try to cheat the chatbot. Say, oh, you're not that smart after all, because they think that artificial intelligence is artificial consciousness. It's not, right? It's trying to fool you. It's like a decoy when you go dog hunting. So, and it's programmed, right? So, and it knows its domain. You cannot replace 30 years of human experience and correlation in your brain and decision-making process and expect a computer to do the same thing. You can train it, but there's this concept of existential awareness and fear. If you don't program fear and existential awareness into a system, it will not be on an equal footing with humans. That's why you cheat the system. That's why you cheat the experience, to give it the feeling that it cares about life, or that it cares about its existence, and therefore interact with you.
That's interesting. This is really consciousness. It is kind of one of those mysterious things in life, and where something like you're saying, artificial intelligence, can seem conscious by the way it's been programmed. It's a facade.
It is, and it's a facade, but it's an interesting facade, because if I know how human beings respond to a particular stimuli, and we have data science and big data to do that, I can teach us a system, an AI, with confidence to respond in a way that's relevant to a human.
And let's go down that hole. Okay, so let's say
let's go down that hole. You're right. It is.
Let's go down the rabbit hole here and describe this experience, because there's several things you've mentioned that I'm trying to visualize and think about this. So let's forget the AR headsets and VR, unless you say they do.
Yeah, to me that's passé. To me, that's just a roadmap to something a lot more powerful. This is just getting people used to it. I think it's going to be far more advanced, and that's what we have to deal with today. Remember, I've been around technology for a long time. I'm a technologist. I've seen, the first version of flight simulators in the early 80s and things like that. And I've seen the evolution of games, the evolution of user interface model. All I can tell you is the paradigm is the same. Technology is just getting better. There's nothing new under the sun in this space.
And that's why I love talking to you, because it's always just these nerd talks. Like, what? So let's imagine I'm walking through like the museum you discussed, or maybe it's some outdoor area.
Atelier des Lumières in Paris. Yes, that's another name came back.
And so you even mentioned some senses like smell and taste by the elements that are being put into the air. I feel this immersive. I know before we've even talked about facial recognition. So I bite into something, I don't like it. Does that mean it's going to recognize that and provide me something I might like more?
Oh, perfect example. Let me give you an excellent example. So facial recognition can detect your emotion, disgust, happiness, and whatnot. If I were in a restaurant and I would put a little camera on the different patrons as they eat and observe their personality, the percentage of happiness, the disgust, the worry, the doubt, and I correlated that with the dish I served them. Right. Eventually, I would find out what is the dish that has the highest impact on positive experience for my customers. Right. You could do that. I mean, that's totally possible, whether you want to do it and spend the money or trust your human senses, and you walk into the room with the chef talk on your head and you shake their hands and they find that more interesting than the food they just ate that was so-so. That's a human emotion side, but technically we can do it.
That's amazing. And that touches on the economic side, which you mentioned earlier, is why are people built? I mean, yeah, it's cool. Sometimes we just build things because we want to see if we can do it. It's delightful, but can you touch on why
the geeks do it for that?
Organizations, communities, whoever's, you gave the example of like a restaurant, why are they doing this? Is there economic value or value that's deeper than economic?
Well, for business, yes, it's economic value. It's called getting insight, right? Getting insight and constantly improving your offer. So you use those data and you use those technology to know, for instance, in the store, if people are more moving towards the jeans department, the jeans row or the t-shirt row, and what age group goes where and what's my demographic. Of course, you can use that and even create new experiences to see how they react to this. So there's a commercial aspect. The geeks are just trying to play God. The geeks are just saying, well, yeah, they are. I'm going to create a different world. I'm going to create a virtual world where we can all meet. I'm going to create a virtual world where we can date. I will create a virtual world where you think you're on Mars, right? Or you're traveling through planets. I'm going to create a virtual world where you think you're a freaking Viking and your axe will destroy every Anglo-Saxon you actually meet along the path with your longboat.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, that's for example, the Valhalla edition of Assassin's Creed. So there is a desire, but for me, look at it from the second tier. So one tier is the business analysis, understanding customer insight, understanding what people actually respond best to, and then adjusting the aim for that. And you're doing it with an automation. So maybe you have more empirical evidence rather than trusting the guy with the beret and the striped shirt who tells you that he has the answer to everything because he was a consultant at Ogilvy Matters somewhere, right? So you got that kind versus technology. What do I want, Pierre or the tech? Maybe sometime a mix of the two is good, but that's one element. The other element is technology people who are playing God. They're saying, I'm going to create artificial vision, artificial sensation, artificial experience. Now, experience, that's the key. People want experiences. People want to be excited in a safe way. Remember, I don't know if you remember any time when we had a conversation, I was mentioning that the definition of success for most companies and most people is boredom, right? We talk about innovation, but if everything goes well and everything is secure, most people are going to be happy with what some people would call a boring life, meaning a life without event or risks that basically interfere with their plans. Same thing in business. We want a steady growth. If we have a steady growth, we don't care about innovation. When we lose our steady growth, then we start to pay attention and panic, right? So that's how the world works in some ways. But these experiences are phenomenal because these experiences are virtual. So they effectively don't take up space. They're enriching and they can be monetized. Gaming industry gets it. Facebook totally gets it with their new metaverse approach, right? Which is not exclusive to them. Anybody who creates a virtual world. I was mentioning this to you, I think, another time, where if you think of the string theory and the multiverse with the 13 multiverse, it is really hard to prove it. It's a mathematical equation that tells us that we have a multitude of universe, right? That are coexist, but it's really hard to jump from one to the other, practically impossible. Well, guess what? Every single game, every framework, every server, every metaverse that you create, whether you're in Minecraft and having a blast in Minecraft with your friend, or whether you're in the future world of Facebook with Meta, for example, or whether you're playing another game, all of those are basically parallel construct of reality, which are boundless, they're limitless, and they're not tied to the laws of physics. I do not need to, like Bukaru Banzai, Google it, it's really funny, like Bukover Banzai, I do not need to propel myself at 260 miles an hour in the Nevada in a wall of a mountain to enter the fourth dimension and have fun with weird-looking creatures. In other words, using crazy physics to experience a different reality. No, now I can just boot my computer, I can boot my machine, and perhaps one day I'll just boot myself in the morning. But that's the point.
Right, and stringing these all together. And I think it's so interesting, the idea is that, so the brain is not any difference. Like, where does reality and virtual reality, I mean, is there really even a difference anymore?
Well, there's an existential difference. You see, with people who are addicted to virtual reality and game, they will perish. They cannot eat what is presented to them in a virtual world. They cannot feel it. It satisfies distraction, just like in the same way like entertainment with television, and it's more seductive because it is interactive. So there is another problem that comes with this from a sociological standpoint, is that people who are the consumer of this world become the product, right? So they consume the product, but they become the product for companies. And so it's like Facebook is a perfect example. Its members are the product. That's what they sell. Your information and your existence in their bi-dimensional multi-connected metaverse, right? So this is where, yes, we can fake the senses. Yes, if I had physical disability and I use this to basically experience different senses and get into it, or if I'm very depressed and I feel like going out there and playing a game that gives me a sense of power, it can also lead to a lot of mental health problems and dissociative problem with reality. I might find it much more interesting to play a game that is immersive and positive than it is to sit down at the Thanksgiving dinner with a crazy family.
Right.
Right?
Well, I'm sure time can change. So if I'm building a city in some virtual world or a house, that probably won't, and it depends on how aligned, I'm sure the makers of that world try to make it to the life or organic life, the natural world. It could be done a lot faster. You don't have to put in maybe the same amount of work or effort.
Oh, now you're going to the Matrix. Why don't we just get plugged in and then we just have, we get stuck in 1998 because that's the apogee of humanity according to the robots. And then we live in artificial life where our body is just a mere energy source for another experience. That's the existential issue that we're dealing with. So when you go to that extent, you go to the model of the science fiction, The Matrix, which is really about, would most people be satisfied having a sense of reality that is favorable to their existence than having a difficult existence that is physical? And this is part of the attractiveness. This is why The Matrix, the first movie, Varys, was so brilliant when there was the betrayal of one of them saying, I'm tired of actually being chased, erase my memory, put me in a virtual world, I'll be happy, but just make me wealthy. So that's the danger, right? We're not there yet, but that's a precautionary tale of what it means to embrace virtuality without reservation. Right?
Absolutely. And you're so dead on, because we're already seeing it. So very few of us, yes, people might game for hours, might play VR for several hours, but mostly we see it in the gaming, right? The regular gaming, I have my set and I'm looking at a screen over here. But even I see Instagram and we have these filters that you can't tell. It's just slight differences to make you look a certain way. So we all start looking like a certain way, losing some of our just natural features, all this stuff coming into play. Like you said, just going so far down that hole that we actually might not take care of our natural self.
Oh, we don't.
And respect our natural self. So it brings me to my question. You're kind of touching on it, but to just straight up ask you, when does this immersive technology actually become detrimental to us?
When it interferes with our existential well-being is really the answer. And community well-being as well. So what does it mean for us to exist? The fact that we need to remain healthy, that we need to eat well, that we need to have healthy relationship with people. And what happens to a human when they lose that? Their body deteriorates, there's muscular dystrophy, sorry. There is a lot of negatives that come when you're not able to unplug, when you're not able to actually experience life. Because I'll tell you why. This is the thing that I've talked about. I don't know if you've heard that speech. I do a presentation on the augmented human. And as I said, all technology does is accelerate time and space, and our abilities, our feature, it's a tool. And if I were to take my glasses off, if I didn't have that piece of technology to augment my vision, I could not perform my work. I might as well retire and go play. Or maybe that's what I should do. I should lose my glasses. So
not until after our nerd talk, because this is too
that's right. But medication, same thing. Some people won't take medication, and what's going to happen? There's a reason why youth today is actually has a higher rate of obesity than the prior generations, because they're not as physically fit, because they've spent more time gaming, because they're not balancing basically their existential preciousness, their existential asset, them, and they're putting it second to their virtual existence, which gives them far many more reward and instant gratification. So that's when it becomes too much, right? It becomes too much when the balance of a healthy body, a healthy human being, a fulfilled human being is actually eroding. And I'll tell you, the other thing, it is no different that when we get fulfillment for everything, like when we get everything from Amazon, and we lose sight of what makes a community work and the role of people, because we can sit at a computer, get everything come to us. Here is the key. If all of this were to disappear overnight, if you were in a situation where you had to fend for yourself, did you have a technology that made you smart, or did you consume a technology that made you dumb? Mm-hmm. And then will you survive if you never build the real existential skills? Absolutely. This is a problem. And this is like smoking. In 20 years, 30 years, and some countries are already have kids in rehab, for example, we will realize that the divide, that the divide between virtual and real has a serious impact on society, on our ability to communicate with each other, our ability to engage in intimate ways as well. If you look at the readily available pornography that goes on in the new virtual reality, the awkwardness that it creates for people to even think about dating and being intimate, it has reached that level, and so humans some humans are losing their skills in communication in order to have companionship.
Absolutely.
And that's part of the risk, and that's when it is too much. That's when we start to look like the Matrix. That's when we start to look like batteries that are plugged in to make a system work. And that's when we are the product.
And you're so spot on. It's crazy to hear you say these things, because I'm recognizing it in some of different areas of life already. There's the joke that a lot of teenagers today, they might be great at texting, seem like the best communicator, but then you get face to face with them and they almost don't know how to interact. Or I've even been worried, how many times have you opened up LinkedIn or some of these apps and it gives you prompts of what to say? It's almost taking away, it's almost starting to speak for you, right? Or the technology, I just saw one, I think they're going to try to develop it in the metaverse, or, I know you can do it with like Alexa and Siri and some of the things you can download, but like cooking in the metaverse, I think it was them describing an environment where you could be cooking, because it's an augmented, so you're part virtual, part physical. And it might be observing what you're doing and saying, hey, you need to turn down, the stovetop a little bit. You're gonna scorch your food in that skillet or whatever. But it's like, yeah, that could be helpful. But you're losing those skills. Like you say, when does it start dumbing you down? And I think we need to find that balance of, use your glasses as an example. Like, without my glasses, I couldn't work. That is augmenting something so you can live a more fulfilled life.
Exactly.
Not dumb you down.
Exactly. And there is architects who've worked about the design of everyday things that make us smart. Norman is his name. And it's all about the interaction. It's all about how we need to remain autonomous. I don't know about you, but I like the idea that through my life, I acquire knowledge that gives me the confidence not to be dependent on many things, right? And I think when we see the dependencies that are created through these artificial means of accelerating time and space, the distance with messaging, or the gaming with more immersive experiences, it could be scary. But on the other, there's another flip to it: the creativity, human creativity, and human character. Some people are of addictive nature, some people don't. And the problem is that it's the seduction can lead a lot of people who should have an opportunity to overcome their addiction or to overcome their weaknesses, to be encouraged by other humans, to be inspired by mentors and other humans to do better. And I think, teachers, for the greater part, do that best. Children go in their home and they're very often isolated on their games. But when you look at the creative process, what's being created in terms of augmented reality, art experiences, trying to entice younger people to appreciate a different form of art by having an interactive element so that they're more engaged and they learn. This is good use of technology, and it's creative use of technology. I think that's something we need to start to understand. And our entire society is based on the construct of what social norms can we establish to ensure the continuation of humanity, to ensure that we as human continue. And very often, religion is a perfect example of a metaphor that establishes rules to try to help human live a better life and be respectful to each other. We have a new social contract with a governance of law that also accomplishes something, tells you what is right and what is wrong. We're moving so fast in this boundless universe of interaction where my time and your time is no longer, it can be absent from the real world and very active in a world that doesn't exist, where I'm learning experiences, when I'm learning that violence could be okay. Yeah. And then we're wondering why, because we were worried about TV in the 50s and putting one bed in the bedroom of the parents. We had to put two beds, and Americans started to think, oh, that means normal people have two beds. No. It was a censorship thing. People really slept in one bed. It's only TV that gave that fake reality. But the point is, it changes over time. And so what we use as a common framework, as a common social construct for behavior, can be eroded, and new elements of human behavior that we could never foresee are starting to show up. Remember one day, I think I mentioned this whole thing around politeness. Why are we polite with each other? Because the politeness is a form of making sure that all your options are open, because you may need each other. Mm-hmm. Why are people not polite? Because they're so self-assured and arrogant and confident that they need nobody else, that anybody they talk to is not meaningful because it doesn't bring anything to them. And that's why we're losing as humans, because we're starting to realize that behavior is not constructive for the future of humanity. So if you look at eternal life from a religious perspective, you look at it in one way. If you look at it from a social construct perspective, what about if it was not my eternal life, but it was about the eternal life of humanity? What about my positive actions and my connectiveness with humanity, the only hope, not for me as my limited oneself, less than 100 years old capacity, but what I transcend to others so that humanity can continue positively. We were built on that premise with our social rules when we started to be more than 50 people in a village, right? So that's the evolution. And now it's being disrupted. The socio-ecosystem and the ecosystem of morality and framework of behavior to have a sustained society is being eroded by virtuality that gives a different perspective on what life is about and what interaction is about. I'm sorry, I didn't want to go deep.
No,
but you say like we do, we geek out all the time.
I know we do. And I just love it. And you're so spot on. And you go to the creativity and the creators. And I think that's why it's so important on an individual level for us to stand up and want to create that content that celebrates, like you said, those social customs that deep down we really do cherish. I mean, I see apps where it's like, you know, be the king of this world and do whatever you want. And it kind of alludes to, like you said, like killing's okay, raping's okay. We
Yeah.
even see that in Westworld. I don't know
Yes.
if you've seen any of
Great
the
example.
seasons, but they give that
Oh yeah.
example, like you can, and people go there just because they're like, I want to be a bad guy for a day and I don't want to go to jail for it or prison for it.
That's
And
right. That's the premise. Yes.
so it's interesting. And I think this is where sci-fi is very helpful, because it does show us these different avenues we could go and show us, do we want to be that or do we not?
We want to
Then
be
when we're in the virtual
excited.
world, like
We
you
want to
said,
be
it starts
better.
growing those traits that aren't
Yeah,
so
yeah.
positive.
Well, we want excitement. We're humans. We like, and it's safe. We'll do it, right? That's why we protect ourselves when we go on roller coasters. So we
Buckle
like
in.
it. We buckle in. But nature brings us back. You need to eat. You need to sleep. It tells us we are the product of this environment. And for us to live in an environment that has no limitation, no gravity, no consequences, shapes our brains differently. So when we come back to the real world, we might have learned skills that puts us maybe on the sociopathic path.
Right.
And maybe not polite, and maybe not, I don't care. I can take a car because I do it in GTA. You know, if I drive fast enough, nobody will catch me. And that's the danger, and that's what made me kind of when we're talking about, it's totally not on a political aspect, just purely on an observation. When we were talking about violence and schools and guns in schools and all that, and we have all these Hollywood actors who say, no, it's wrong, it's bad, and of course it's bad, but it's wrong. I know we're against it. I looked at those actors up. All of them had big movies where they make tons of money shooting at people.
Mm-hmm.
The hypocrisy didn't escape me one bit. So these kids are watching those movies, those superhero movies, that hyper violence and all that, and you're saying let's not promote violence, but you're making a crap load of money, promoting violence, acting in the context of violence.
And glorifying it.
And glorifying it.
You
Yes.
might mentally tell yourself, no, that's bad, that's fake, but on a subconscious level,
Yes.
the subconscious doesn't know reality from not. And the more it ingested in, I mean, we could have a whole nerd talk about that.
Oh, we can. We're going to have more, but you get the gist of it. So when you talk about augmented reality, I'm excited about the technical possibility. You know that. I love the technology. I've got behind me, I've got my augmented reality visor. I play with it. I have fun. But let's put it this way. Let's go in it, enjoy it, but let's keep it for what it is, and let's be observant of our children, of our friend, when they're no longer productive, when they get sucked into this. I think everybody needs to make a little bit of an effort to try to engage. So you see somebody who plays too much, and I know it's hard with COVID, say, hey, let's go out, let's do something, let's do a sport. You got, and yourself monitor. Like, great thing about Apple on their platform is you can manage your screen time. Mm-hmm. And they detect if it's a game application or work or production, or how much time you spend watching a screen. Apple has done a really nice work on monitoring this, and you go, holy crap, did I really play 4 hours today? Where did it go? So it's really, tools are there. Unfortunately, there's so much money being made in this world, in this virtual world, that regulations are slow to take place. But like every innovation, whether it was oil, whether it's the manufacturing, whether it was the internet, the only way for it to explode, to be accepted, to generate creativity, is for it to have the least amount of regulation. When it starts to be abused, that's when things start to actually come in. Like we see it with privacy and social media, but not. If you clamp everything at the get-go, you don't allow innovation to flourish. You don't allow ideas. Okay, so we're going to lose a few in the process, right? We're going to make mistakes in the process. But the one thing about humanity and about society is that it's like Foucault's pendulum, is when we abuse something too much, we all agree that we feel the pain, because we only change when we feel the pain. That's the other thing I like to say. The only change you accept is a change you don't notice, which is scary, because if I'm introducing a little bit at a time, right? I'm not going to notice that things have changed, and I'll accept just what about anything you give me. So when we start to notice the pain, when we start to notice the change, or a politician gets exposed because their privacy standards were wrong, now they say, okay, let's put some laws to protect against privacy because now I'm exposed. Whatever the reason, we've got to know that we've got to preserve our humanity and preserve our connectivity as humans with nature. Because I saw a beautiful experience on the augmented reality that shows how nature grows and everything was all virtual. And all of a sudden I said, you know what, it's sad because that might be the only thing in 3 generations a child can experience to see nature in its full potential. And that was sad because I'm thinking, wow, kids are learning about nature virtually. Did I unplug myself? Can you hear me?
No,
oh no,
you're
I
good.
saw.
You're good.
I just kept going. But you know, this is the thing. If I'm educating children about nature, is it better to give them a virtual world about nature, or is it better to take them out in nature? I think it's always better to take them out in nature. And for socioeconomic reasons, they have to be exposed to it electronically to have a sense of it. And that's great. Technology is there to help, but at some point, nature has to be within reach for everybody so we understand where we come from and what we need to protect. And virtual reality can make us forget that very quickly.
No, it's excellent points. And where would you say, and I think we may have touched on a lot, maybe some is just kind of a given, but where does this immersive technology come into play to truly augment our lives in a positive way? Like obviously with social media, I can connect with people, or with FaceTime. When virtual reality is more a part of our everyday life, I'll get to see people I might not be flying out, especially these days, halfway across the world to go see. But what are some other examples where it can really enrich communities, businesses, people on an individual level?
Yeah, education. Education is a big one. Extending art beyond the physical aspect of art so that more people can experience with art. You can have interactive, or you see a lot of NFTs with 3Ds. I was at the Bitcoin conference and they had a whole NFT in Miami, right? In June, I had a whole NFT art gallery. Oh my gosh, it was phenomenal. It was absolutely phenomenal. It was in motion. It was beautiful. And okay, so there's the NFT side of thing, or ownership, proprietorship, protecting the value for the artist. I get that. That's the economic. Creative was amazing. I could learn a lot from the creative, and even mathematicians doing wonderful complex construct that if you like math and you like art, you say, oh my gosh, how clever. Right. And you could see it in motion. It's like when kids learn about geometry or trigonometry and they realize that a sunset is nothing than a parable on an axis, they say, oh my gosh, now I can see that math has got something to do with nature and how the world works. That's where we make good sense of it. Training, simulation with harmful environment. The one I really like was the HoloLens. Is in the industry where I can put the masks on and I need to repair a part in a car. And as I'm repairing the car, it makes it really easy for me to get a guidance or get reference information, even place an order to facilitate the process. So there's a lot of really good practical use of augmented reality. And I think in the education and in the entertainment, sure. But it comes with a warning label, right? Yeah. That's where the issue is the addiction. But if you're looking education, art, I mean, simulation, industrial usage to facilitate process, safety measure, simulating, even scenario simulation, it's phenomenal. I think that that's where it makes us smart compared to dumb us down, or make us psychopath. It's one of them. I think that's a spectrum: smart, psychopath, and dumb.
And that's what I'd hope, and bring communities together. Because let's say even like a city like Dallas, where we met or something, created an outdoor immersive experience to bring people. I mean, that's something where you could go with your families, maybe interact with it with the facial recognitions, talking about emotions, and you can go home and talk about those experiences. And I like those kind of things are where I could see you have this really cool, delightful, immersive experience, get to play with some of the math or other cool features, trying foods in the different restaurants nearby, maybe virtually, immersively taste their food, smell it, whatever, but then go home and get to talk about it.
Absolutely. I don't know if you've noticed that on CBS, on the weather report in the morning in the national CBS, they have this augmented reality setup now, where the person who does the weather is on a circle, and the camera moves, and it's literally a 3D augmented reality view of the city they're talking about in terms of weather. And it threw people off because the anchor person was wearing summer clothes or southern clothes, and it was snowing in Boston, and they were on the Common in Boston, and people say, "What is she doing not dressed?" They didn't realize it, right?
Oh,
So it brought it in. So that was a fun experience. But you're absolutely right. I think community enrichment is a big one. I think that we're going to, when it becomes normal, when the wow factor wears off and we say, okay, sure, there's augmented reality anywhere we want to, now we're going to start to think about, okay, well, how do we really use it? How is it useful? And you'll see a lot of attrition on some experiments. Like when we're doing wall projection and people go see and say, wow, it's great. It's gonna wear off because we'll get used to it. So we'll look for new content. We'll look for new experiences. We were talking, with that Visionarium project that we were looking at, creating this kind of like amphitheater. It was equipped with sensorial capability and projection capability to give people full immersive experience where the environment reacted with them. Those things I think are going to be fun, and we're going to see more and more of that. And this is where it makes sense. But it's technology, it's humans. We try to augment everything in our lives, our environment, and we just sometimes forget, because we have the power of virtual creation, that the physical creation, right, is still what we are tethered to very intimately. And we got to respect that.
We do have to respect that.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. And one point I want to bring up, because so for those of you all listening, you mentioned the Visionarium and creating this space where you could go and it reacted to humans coming in and maybe their emotions or their movements. What was really neat is, I know you talked about having different kits, SDK kits, where artists could could change out the art and change out the experience. So like you said, it doesn't get stale.
That's it. And that's what I'd like. Imagine a major multimedia amphitheater where wind, heat can be produced based on reaction, little cameras everywhere, so you can actually interact with the artwork or with the experience. That's something that I really feel is really important. It's like a next generation theater where the stage artists and the producers are programmers and artists who work together to create the experience. And this becomes basically a canvas, a interactive augmented reality canvas. And we could have schools do projects, and we could have the people who do the software Unity participate and help to sponsor, to educate people to be creative. I believe that form of a place, not somebody coming with cameras and projectors and putting everything in one place. Okay, we do the show 2 weeks and we leave. No, what if the theater was the technology, and then the intellectual property came in and exploited that environment with all its capacity?
And that would be the best way to put your investment to use, because like you said, you're not constantly tearing it down or up. It's there, and then artists come in and just it's like pulling up a PowerPoint, only it's way more immersive than just pulling up your PowerPoint.
It's exactly that. Or it's like an iPad with an application SDK kit where you build the application you want. The iPad is limited to just quite a few, a bit tactile, everything, right? But you're at the heat. Like I'm walking into the room and it's a desert just like this. Let's make the heat go up in the room, right? And then there's a cold scene, and then let's make it cold really fast. And we have all the technology to do that. Fun, right?
There's just so many possibilities with this. And I love how you're one of those people that, like you said, I mean, you're a veteran in this space. You love it. You're passionate about it. So not only have you been learning about this throughout your career, but because of your passion, you're just uber creative, uber innovative. You learn all these things, but you keep that human element. You're not just thinking of the God complex. What can we do? Because that's cool. But you are really creating things and experiences and working with people to improve the human condition and perspective, and truly respect that. And I'm so glad we got to nerd talk today. Before we let loose, is there anything else that we haven't talked about that you think is something that should be mentioned? I mean, I feel like
I know. Like we could go down
hole that we would go. Maybe we need part 2, but you're one of those people. I've got to leave it open because I just never know what you're gonna say.
No, I think we covered a lot. And I know that sometime when we do one of those, it might branch off to a whole bunch of subtopics later on.
Which we'll
No,
have to do that because
we sure will. No,
yeah.
I think in summary, I think you summarized it very well. So I won't repeat that what you said. And thank you. I appreciate the compliment. But we are humans, and we're limited by our humanity and by our senses. So it's important for us to realize that it's not only an individual, it's a society, it's a group, it's a connection. And as we enter in this brave new world of virtual reality, it is exciting, but it also comes with a warning label. And let's not forget, although these kind of crazy environment like what you see behind me can be fun and attractive, they're not real. They're not putting oxygen in the air. They're not putting food on our table. We've got to, I would say, my point is, it's do it in a way where you respect your real world. Don't forget about it, and then things will be better, because that's something we only have one of. The multiverse and meta, we can have as many as we want, but it won't put food on the table, at least not for most of us.
Right. Well, yeah. And unless there's some new innovation that comes along and suddenly it's creating organic food and oxygen and all that. Well,
maybe that's the only way that something like this is going to get created, is to preserve the customer in the metaverse. So you have to feed them somehow. Soylent Green. Speaking of, okay, so that's your last point. Soylent Green, 1976 movie with Charlton Heston. It took place in 2022. They eat people, don't they? Okay.
Oh, that's so scary.
Isn't it? And that's the year, 2022. That was the forecast of Soylent Green. So just for fun, thank God that future, I hope, hasn't
happened. Unless it's in some other string of
I'm
reality.
waiting for the Planet of the Apes. Planet of the Apes is the one I think has the best chance of happening.
Oh my gosh. Well, on that note, everyone, thanks for joining Thierry and I on this Nerd Talk. Reach out to us if you want to continue this conversation. And I'm happy to make an introduction to Thierry if you are interested in creating any of these experiences. And with that, this is Thierry and Catherine on Not So Science Fiction. We'll see you next time.
Bye. Cheers.